What if the secret to financial freedom was hiding in a 3-digit code you've never really understood? Imagine turning a chaotic paycheck into a predictable, stress-free plan with just 3 simple numbers. You're about to discover why those numbers work, how to fit every bill, craving, and future goal into them, and what most people get wrong even after they've read the rule a dozen times. Most people think budgeting is a mountain of spreadsheets, endless receipts, and sleepless nights. The truth is far simpler. The 50-30-20 rule is a framework that can be whispered into any income, any lifestyle, and still deliver results. It's been around for decades, but it keeps resurfacing because it solves a core problem. People need a clear, intuitive map for their money. Without a map, you wander, you overspend, you feel guilty, and you never build the safety net you need. With a map, you know exactly where each dollar should go. You can see progress, and you can adjust without panic. Let's set the stage. Picture a typical month. A paycheck arrives. The rent or mortgage is due. The electric bill lights up the screen. The grocery list is growing. A streaming service auto-renews, and somewhere in the back of your mind, a thought about a vacation or a new phone. You're juggling all of that, maybe with a side hustle, maybe with student loans, maybe with a family to feed. The stress of where does this money go can be a silent thief, stealing sleep and confidence. The 50-30-20 rule steps in as a mental shortcut, a way to allocate every dollar before you even think about spending it. It says 50% of after-tax income goes to essentials, 30% to discretionary wants, and 20% to savings or debt repayment. It sounds tidy, but the magic is in the details: what counts as a need, how to track the percentages, and how to avoid the traps that turn a promising plan into a broken promise. First, let's unpack the 50% slice, the foundation of the rule. Needs are the non-negotiables, those expenses that keep a roof over your head, lights on, and food on the table. Rent or mortgage payments dominate this category. If you earn $3,500 after taxes, 50% is $1,750. That $1,750 must cover housing, utilities, transportation, insurance, and minimum debt payments. Think of a real-life scenario. Maya, a graphic designer in a mid-sized city, earns $4,200 after tax. Her rent is $1,200, electricity $120, water $40, internet $60, car payment $300, gas $150, health insurance $250, and a student loan minimum of $200. Add those up and you get $2,320, already over the 50% ceiling. Mia's story illustrates a common pitfall. The 50% guideline assumes your essential costs are within that range. If they're not, you must either reduce those costs or temporarily shift more money into the needs bucket until you can bring the other categories down. Maya decides to refinance her car, move to a roommate situation, and switch to a cheaper health plan, pulling her essential spend down to $1,730, just under the target. She now has a realistic baseline that aligns with the rule. Now let's talk about the 30% wants bucket. This is where the fun lives, but also where many people stumble. Wants are not luxuries you can't live without. They're the choices you make after the essentials are covered. This includes dining out, hobbies, gym memberships, streaming services, travel, and even that upgraded coffee each morning. The key is that these expenses are flexible. If you find yourself overspending here, you can trim without jeopardizing your basic security. Consider Jamal, a software engineer who earns $5,000 after tax. After allocating $2,500 to needs, he has $2,500 left. He decides to spend $1,000 on a new gaming console, $400 on a premium gym, $300 on dining out, $200 on a music streaming plan, and $300 on a weekend getaway. That totals $2,200, well within his 30% allowance of $1,500. Wait, that's a miscalculation. Jamal has actually overspent his wants by $700. The surprise here is that many people mistakenly think wants can be any amount as long as it feels rewarding. The reality is that the 30% cap forces you to prioritize. Jamal reevaluates. He cancels the premium gym, switches to a community center for $50, reduces dining out to $150, and postpones the weekend trip. Now his discretionary spend is $1,250, fitting comfortably under the 30% ceiling. He still enjoys his hobbies, but with smarter choices. The third pillar, the 20% slice, is often the most misunderstood. Savings and debt repayment are grouped together, but they serve very different purposes. Savings can be an emergency fund, a retirement account, or a sinking fund for a future purchase. Debt repayment includes any extra payments beyond the minimum required to knock down high-interest balances faster. Let's follow Priya, a nurse who makes $3,800 after tax. Her needs consume $1,900, her wants $1,140, leaving $800 for the 20% category. Priya has a credit card balance with a 22% APRA and a student loan at 5%. She decides to allocate $500 to the credit card, paying more than the minimum, and $300 to a high-yield savings account earmarked for a future house down payment. By attacking the high-interest debt first, she reduces the amount of interest she'll pay over time, while still building a safety net. The rule isn't just about percentages, it's about strategy. The 20% can be split however you need, but the goal is to make both debt and savings move forward each month. Now that we've dissected each slice, let's talk about how to put the rule into action with a concrete tool. I've created a downloadable spreadsheet template that walks you through the process step by step. The sheet has 3 main tabs: income, allocation, and tracker. In the income tab, you input every source of after-tax earnings: salary, freelance gigs, side hustles, even occasional cash gifts. The allocation tab automatically calculates 50, 30, and 20% of that total, populating the 3 budget columns. The tracker tab is where you log each expense as it occurs, assigning it to the appropriate bucket. The spreadsheet uses conditional formatting to highlight overspending in red, giving you an instant visual cue. For example, if you accidentally log a $200 streaming subscription under needs, the cell will flash, prompting you to reclassify it. This immediate feedback prevents the slow creep of misallocation that many people experience. To start, download the file, open the income tab, and fill in your numbers. The sheet will instantly tell you that, on a $4,500 after-tax income, you have $2,250 for needs, $1,350 for wants, and $900 for savings or debt. Then, as you move through the month, you simply copy each transaction into the tracker, choose the appropriate column, and watch the running totals. By month's end, you'll see exactly where you stood relative to the rule, and you can adjust for the next cycle. Even with a perfect tool, many fall into common pitfalls that sabotage the 50-30-20 plan. The first trap is the hidden expense costs that seem negligible but add up, like subscription services you forgot you signed up for. A quick audit of your bank statements can reveal $10, $20 a month streaming services, a gym you never use, or a forgotten app subscription. Those micro expenses belong in the wants bucket, but they can silently push you over the limit. The second pitfall is the lifestyle creep that follows a raise. Imagine you get a $500 bonus and immediately upgrade your apartment, buy a new car, and add a premium cable package. Your income grew, but so did your spending, and you might still be living at the same 50-30-40 ratio, but with a larger absolute debt load. The rule works best when you keep your spending percentages steady even as your paycheck rises. The third trap is the emergency fund delusion. Some people think setting aside a few $100s satisfies the 20% requirement, but true financial security often demands 3 to 6 months of living expenses in liquid form. If you only save a token amount, you might feel you're following the rule while remaining vulnerable to a sudden job loss. The fourth pitfall is misclassifying debt payments. Minimum payments on high-interest debt belong in the 20% bucket, but they also count as a need in the sense that the debt is an obligation. To avoid double counting, treat the minimum as a need, then allocate any extra payment from the 20% portion. Finally, ignoring variable income is a big mistake for freelancers and gig workers. If your monthly earnings swing wildly, you can use a rolling average of the past 3 months to set your percentages, then adjust each month based on actual cash flow. This prevents you from overcommitting during a high-earning month, and then scrambling when the next paycheck is smaller. Let's explore how the rule adapts to different life stages and financial goals. A recent college graduate with a modest entry-level salary might find the 50% bucket squeezed by rent in an expensive city. In that case, they could temporarily shift to a 60-20-20 split, allocating a larger share to needs while still preserving the savings habit. A mid-career professional with a stable income and a mortgage may reverse the balance: 40% for needs, 35% for wants, and 25% for savings, especially if they're aiming for early retirement. Parents with children often need to factor in childcare, education savings, and family activities, which can push the wants category down. The key is that the percentages are a guideline, not a law. The underlying principle is to ensure that a meaningful portion of income is always moving toward future security while still allowing for present enjoyment. The spreadsheet template includes a custom ratio field, letting you test different allocations without breaking the flow. You can see, for instance, how moving an extra 5% from needs to savings impacts your monthly cash cushion. This flexibility makes the rule a living tool rather than a static command. Now for a twist that will make you rethink everything you thought you knew about budgeting. 50-30-20 rule isn't really about the numbers at all. It's about habit formation. The percentages serve as a mental anchor that forces you to ask a simple question every time you consider a purchase. Does this belong in my 50, my 30, or my 20? Over time, that question rewires your brain to prioritize needs, enjoy wants responsibly, and protect the future. Studies show that people who consistently practice this kind of categorical thinking are 40% more likely to build an emergency fund and 30% more likely to pay off high-interest debt within 2 years. In other words, the rule works because it creates a decision-making shortcut, not because the math is perfect for every circumstance. If you can internalize the habit of sorting each expense, you'll find yourself automatically adjusting when life throws curveballs like an unexpected medical bill or a sudden windfall. The spreadsheet is just the scaffolding. The real power lies in the habit you develop. So, where does that leave you? You now have a clear map of how to allocate every dollar, a practical tool to track those allocations, and a set of warnings to keep you on course. The next step is simple. Download the spreadsheet, plug in your numbers, and start categorizing today. Watch how the colors change, notice where you're over, and adjust before the month ends. The rule will reveal hidden spending, encourage smarter choices, and build momentum toward financial confidence. And remember, the goal isn't perfection, it's progress. Each month you get a little closer to a balanced budget, a healthier savings habit, and a clearer vision of your financial future. What's the most surprising expense you discovered when you first broke down your budget, and how did it change the way you think about money?